I just want to say a couple of things that I'm hearing that are maybe obvious, but I'm going to say them in a row anyways. Because some of what I'm hearing from y'all is about the specific ways that it is important to you to identify are not necessarily the most acknowledged modifiers or come from parts of you that are being erased, have been erased, that need to be re-amplified. That these kind of Latinidad and all the offshoots and all the variations tend to be ways of calling us after colonizers and affiliating folks with who came to a place, not what came from that place. That we are moved around the world by scarcity, by labor, the availability of labor, therefore by scarcity, therefore by colonizers again, who caused that scarcity. And that we are in a constant state of urgency. That means that we are actually too busy to keep redefining ourselves because there's work to do. So I wonder, I'm curious, I'd like to just poll the room and find out how many people are on Team Lina. It's a hoax, throw it out. Latinidad. Yeah, it's a hoax. How many? Interesting. And some undecided. I can see some undecided halfway up.
Sorry, I didn't get clear the question.
How many people agree with you that it's a hoax?
The Latino and Latina.
Latinidad, like this whole making us dance this dance. You actually earned 2 votes. Okay, and then further to Lina's manifesto, that we should start over with defining who we are. I'm into that. Wait, but we can keep what we want. We'll start over, but we'll keep the stuff we want. Yeah, okay, I'm there. I got myself there.
Or like Bárbara said, you can't ignore certain things.
Yeah.
You can't ignore that she is an Afro-Latina, right?
Yeah.
She can't just say, you know what, I'm going to start over, I'm going to be a white woman. You know what I'm saying? So
Bang on.
I think we have to take into what Bárbara says is, I'm not allowed to forget
Yeah.
that I am an Afro-Latina woman, depending where I am. So I think it's an in-between place. I think it's wonderful for us to think that we could start again, but we are all labeled, including we self-label because there's a machine that has taught us to label ourselves. Right? So it's, I think the ideal is to start again, but if we take the reality, which is there's racism, and we have
Yeah.
to call it that, and we all live with our self-internal racism, right, which is part of the machine that keeps us divided, that keeps us calling us labels, and that keeps us our own selves, putting our own selves in.
And racism is structural. Yeah, the oppression that is structural. No one in this room can escape. Everybody in this room is part of the problem. Racism is the base of our socialization. So if you are part of the problem, we have to be part of the solution as well. We have to recognize it.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because you're right, starting, like blank slate is quite a privilege and also a fallacy. But there is something to be said for stripping away what was imposed maybe and starting from what we think the start is. Or not doing that work and not being distracted and continuing with what we decided to do. Nope, not that. Okay, because what we decided to do today, we're so lucky to have been gathered by Caltech and all the hardworking people at Caltech who made this conversation possible and who brought these rich voices into the conversation, and by Neworld Theater, who sponsored this panel, and who, Neworld, woo, woo! Yeah. And who provided us the space to have this conversation about what is Latinidad. And I'm afraid that at this point, this is the maybe it doesn't matter point. And maybe without reference to that label, we can actually just speak more directly about our work as what it is without reference to a framework that someone has provided. Like, what is your work in relation to a square? Is maybe not your choice of the most useful way to talk about your work. What I would really like to do is open up to the floor for a couple of minutes, because everyone's always offering me the best ever segues. And just check if there's something that folks feel the need to speak or to ask or anything in the midst of all that we're... You look like a yes. Yeah, you know, I see it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Siobhan. Hi. Oh, hey. I'm going to sit back down. Okay. Thank you for being here. One of the thoughts that are sort of percolating inside me as someone who is of African heritage presenting mixed heritage person are the different ways that we're either socialized or called upon to choose those different identifiers and different points in life, either through some of the descriptors Bárbara shared around families disassociating from language or losing knowledge of heritage by choice or by external force, and how that then impacts us. I grew up knowing that we were of mixed heritage, but it was not something that was parsed out and discussed. And it's really a fairly new term that's getting explored within my family. So I'm interested at what you all might like to share around that.
So like basically around the like when and where of identifying?
Yes,
That
yeah,
piece?
and how that reconnects us to some of the movements or the movements that we're engaging with, the solidarity that we show, and just generally how that disconnect. I mean, as a stolen people living on stolen lands, how that disconnect. I can't remember who said, I don't know. I can't go back generations and say this person was from here, this person was from there, because those elements were purposefully erased or invisibilized. And so trying to source that heritage is its own journey in the colonial construct. So, yeah.
Thanks. So yeah, Siobhan's asking about when and where and how you identify, and I mean, I guess connected to that is how that expresses your various solidarities or your alignments. Can I just add? You can say no, but can I add? Because that also makes me wonder about like other places where those identifiers appear in your work, like casting call, character description. Like when are you specific and when are you not? Those kinds of things, marketing material. I know for sure up here, when a settler company produces culturally specific work, that's when the character is like a Latino girl discovering da-da-da-da-da-da. And so I'm curious about when you choose to do those things, to identify yourself, to identify characters, to identify roles, et cetera, in your work. Please, I wish you would.
No, it's just to go out of this individualist perspective. Yeah. Yes, like in my work, the whole thing that I'm doing is trying to valorize I, but to find out we. Yeah, it's like I told you yesterday, I'm more with the concern of networking or community or find out, because if I think about my own socialization, my experience was much more diseducated what I learned than follow what I learned. Yeah, in my country, the person from my own social class, person from my skin color of skin, would be convinced to be less. Would be convinced it's not part. It's like when you grow up and believe that your heritage is slavery, you cannot imagine future. Imagination is for white people. Imagination is not for everybody. Imagination is depend of your social class. Yeah, imagination is something really important, to have a right to imagine future. When you live each day that you have to survive this day and this day, earn money to survive today, for today, and tomorrow is abstraction, it's so difficult to imagine. Yeah. So and then my concern is more about how we can find not my own family, but how we build up new families, in the sense of your friendship, your networking, and the sense of we as a people that can find each other and then can work together. How could we try together overcome something that maybe is your problem but is part of mine? Yeah? How could we see the mechanism of oppression? Not my own problem personal, but the mechanism of oppression that we all face from different perspectives. Yeah? If we talk about when we face machismo, sexism, this is a women problem, I would say no. This is a social problem. How the male that's around me could find a way from their own perspective to fight sexism, machismo, not because of me, because this is ugly, this is horrible, this is not fashion, yeah? This is really old style, yeah? This is blah. Yeah? Because of that, for themselves, come together as a coalition. Yeah? So I am much more thinking about what is heritage. When I say I cannot find my heritage in Africa, it's like, where is it? I don't know, because the colonialism was cutting my roads. Cutting. The women, the black women, was under rape. The indigenous women was under rape. And then a lot of families, they don't know what is the original blah, blah, blah. We don't have roots. We cannot follow them because they are cutted. Yeah? If we are much thinking about that, we're not start to fight for the right of imagination, of building something else, how say, building a future for ourselves. It's my whole work is about how we see the common roots among us. It's not the same. Yeah, we are, as a women, we are not the same here. We are really different. We have different social class, or different perspective, different age, different social experience. But something is common, patriarchy. Patriarchy is against patriarchy. Patriarcado. This is a common thing that we have. Yeah, it's like this make us in this world in the same position with difference. Yeah, it's like how can we find what we have in common to fight? It's not our fight will not be the same. It's like which kind of link, which kind of connection, like our friend was telling before, connection, how we find it, how could we understand the mechanism of oppression, how could we understand how capitalism works, how patriarchy works against us. This is my focus. It's like what I want to find together is like understand which world is that we are in and how we can find together, fight against, to overcome from our different place. We don't have the same possibility with the same strategy. But my strategy may help you in your own strategy. It's what we can find together. You know what I mean? This is my real concern. And for a lot of people in this world, if we don't think about heritage as a common being, how say, I don't know the word even in Portuguese. It's like element. It's like I don't need my own personal heritage from my own personal family. This heritage belongs to me also. You know, when I think about indigenous in my country, I know that I'm connect with that. This is my history as well. You know, I know that. Don't need to to find a line in my own little family. What is great, what is nice, I'm not against it. But what I say is like, it's much more bigger than that. Socialization is not about our family. Socialization is about our society. This I want to say.
I'd like to add to that there's definitely a war that's going on in North America, particularly in the educational system. Because here in Canada, as well as in the United States, the heritage of people of African descent, Chicanos, the indigenous, the history, our civilizations, our languages, our stories are not part of the school curriculum. So, you know, in terms of who historically, who most of us are presenting as are the enslaved people that came here. The indigenous are portrayed in another way as they were here, and then they go on to all of, you know, the riches that the colonists have actually brought to this land, completely neglecting the thousands and thousands of years that people have been on this continent. And if the educational system and the curriculum does not acknowledge our history, does not acknowledge the heroes that we have, does not acknowledge, you know, the societies that we've built and civilizations that are eons old, then we're always appearing to be as victims. So as Bárbara has said, in terms of having that imagination, it would be difficult, and it is difficult, to see yourself perhaps beyond that and knowing how to fight for it, even that you have to fight for it. I remember when I was still in school, this is how old I am, it was Black History Month was Black History, it was Negro Week, right? Seriously, so in the 70s, it was still Negro Week, and it was always like, oh God, it's coming up again, because all they ever talked about were these Black people coming up, you know, yeah, they were captured in Africa, and then they came here, and then slavery, and then, you know, now you have Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman and W.E.D., I mean, a whole bunch of stuff is actually not there. So now we've graduated to a month, right? Because of the social justice warriors and historians that our communities have, that are fighting to make sure that our history that we hear from our grandparents, that we hear as part of urban myth, urban legend and myth, all of these things are placed into the curriculum, because not only is it for our children, it's for us. So perhaps it will be easier when scripts are written and when we're writing scripts and those scripts to be accepted, that characters are fully developed and they're stories that make sense. And they're not only speaking in what you think we sound like or what you think they sound like. I mean, the number of times I've seen the same stories where people are talking in a way that they would never speak, because these characters are not being written by or developed by authentic, real people that are not Caucasian. And it is time. You know, those are the things that we can do to help in terms of building that foundation. It is about the school curriculums, to continue to fight to make sure that at least the educational system is a little more fuller or full of stories that, yes, are uncomfortable. Yeah, you want to know why they're uncomfortable? Because you were killing our ancestors so that you could make a profit, and now we're not supposed to talk about it because it makes you uncomfortable. What do you think it feels like to have lived that and to have that generational trauma where it's constantly being pushed down because you're not supposed to talk about it because people don't like it? Because, you know, as they say, well, it wasn't me, you know, who did it. It was, you know, the people way back when. we cannot continue to just ignore it. And that is what I think that we can do today, is that we can fight to make sure that it is part of the curriculum, but at the same time, we're building our own curriculum so that by the time they're willing to put that curriculum into this system, we'll already have the curriculum ready and say, here it is. Here's our history. These are our heroes. This is what we've done and how we've contributed to the planet, because there's a reason why we're still here. Okay, I'm done. I got a little hot with that.
Can I just say,
All right.
I'm just going to hop on this because I'm also an educator.
Yes.
And I teach at UC Irvine, University of California, Irvine. And what I'm finding is that students are social justice warriors. I mean, of course, I'm in the theater department, so that's a different breed. But they're coming forth and saying, they are demanding that the curriculum changes. They are demanding that we're putting people of color on the stages and we're producing people of color on the stages. And it's incredibly refreshing and just inspiring for me as an educator to follow their lead. So and I think it has to do with Trump. You know, I think they are pushing against something, and they have something huge to push against. So there's something really beautiful happening right now amongst the young people. They're making it happen. They're leading it. Yeah.
Thanks. I've got a question over here. Can I use it? Yeah. It's okay. Thank you.
I wanted to take us back to the Latinidad, which I think a lot of us have agreed that it's not the ideal term, and it's a hoax, and it's based on maybe labeling by others and so on. However, in defense of Latinidad, and following Bárbara's presentation just now, I think that if we are looking for commonalities and we're looking for collective collectivity so as to struggle against capitalism, against imperialism, colonialism, racism, and so on, we need those terms that bring us together. We need some kind of glue that will bring us together, as imperfect as it might be. Identifying a collectivity as Latinx implies that we're all in the struggle, that we all share certain characteristics, not necessarily of ancestry or of skin color or this or that or the other, but mainly of imagination and of cultural collectivity, that we have certain experiences that we share, that are common, that we have gone through, and that we can recognize in each other. That when Carmencita says, this is what I did, you know, when I was growing up, I'm her mother. I brought it up. When she says, you know, we were listening to cumbia, or the Chileans were the first ones to bring cumbia to Vancouver. And Bárbara says we were listening to Celia Cruz or whoever. You know, we have experiences that are common. That when we say we were victims or survivors of racism in school, you know, I was labeled this, I was made fun of, you know, I don't have to explain any further because you and you and you went through the same experience. And we all know that we have been oppressed. We all know that we have had to go over all those hurdles. So there are commonalities. There is a collectivity in calling ourselves Latinx, and we could call ourselves Martians, whatever. But in that term, as imperfect as it is, there is that glue that allows us to recognize each other and our experiences, recognize our common imagination and our common goals for a better world for everybody, recognize our struggles against the real enemies, not the one that calls himself or herself this or that, or that, I don't want to use the terms because I don't want to sound like I'm being not mean, but disrespectful to people that call themselves all kinds of different things now, because those all kinds of different terms are divisive. And then we lose sight of what is common. And what has to be always at the forefront, and what has to be the main purpose of our work is our struggle against the real enemies, against capitalism, against imperialism, against racism, and all of those things that have to keep propelling us forward as a collectivity, not only as individuals.
Thank you. Yeah, Marilyn?
Thank you. I wanted to go back to the education thing because I think education is the foundation of how things will change. And in terms of theater training, I think we have systems in place that keep us colonized as creators. The books that are given to us, Shakespeare, all of the canon, the canon, the fact that it's called a canon, all of this is what we learn as practitioners. So if we're talking about Latinidad, as a young Latina theater actor student, what was I told to do? I was driven to go to the Stratford Festival. That was the place that I would be the most successful at. But I don't look like an Ophelia or a Gertrude or, you know what I'm saying? Oh, yeah. And and then also, Chekhov, and then Stanislavski, the Stanislavski system. It's very colonial. It's very male-centric, and it's individualistic. It's not about community, and it doesn't include the practices that come from the Americas, right? It's very Western European. So I think we need to think about, like I'm doing my PhD right now, and when I teach, I wanna know how to teach a different way, because I don't want to continue bringing up these students with this dichotomy within them. They don't fit into the system, right?
Can I comment?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I really want to comment, use one example. It's like me that come from an environment of a white man, internationally. I'm talking about the international theater of the oppressed community. If you see 20 years ago, you just would find names of male, white, heteronormative, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So when I first started working in different countries in Africa, or even in Brazil, in the poor area of Brazil, and I was trying to say, we need to have other facilitators. We need to take a power. We need to occupy, to transform the power, because the way we use the power is the way that we learn the power. And then for us, for instance, women, we have to do it. What I made for that, I wrote my first book. I'm going to show here. This book I wrote in Portuguese was a book that I wanted, because just the whole facilitator was people well educated. But I wanted that the people that I work in community also would be a facilitator, but not only learn the exercise, but learn why and for what we are doing this method. And then in Guinea-Bissau, I started to write really as simple as possible, but with the whole content, articles, to work with the people also with the concept, the theory, And then I call this the theory of the praxis in the theater of the oppressed. The whole theory. But in the way of I learn in Africa is like the telling story. Every concept telling in the way of one concrete example. I wrote this book in Portuguese, and my colleagues, women from my network, they want to translate the book into Spanish. And they made it with a woman in Spain and another woman in Argentina. And then they create the book in Spanish. Is I didn't ask them to do this, but because we were inside of the network, they made it. And we launched it in Barcelona in Spanish. You know, another friends of mine, another woman, was working the book, and they translate it in Italian. Yeah, my colleagues from Bologna University. It's like they made it, and then the money that we earned for one book, we invest in the other book. I made the same. You have this book in English. It was the same. I launched this book in LA with UCLA friends that they made this process. I wrote this book here. This is my second book. Yeah, this is my aesthetics research that I'm doing over this decade. I have women translated in Guatemala into English because she's a US living in Guatemala, but also women in Argentina, in another in France. They are working together online. You know, it's like women in different places in the world because they want to have the things that we consider common. And this, the third book, as a really big process too, is the Teatro Las Oprimidas. We are in Portuguese. We are going to launch this in Spanish in Argentina this year. And then at the same time, we are translating this in English. I'm saying that because as a black woman, I never will be asked to come and write a book. You know, it's like write a book that we are going to launch for you. I work with Theater of the Oppressed with 30 years. And they know that because we have met in Brazil in 93. 30 years. If I would be a man, white and middle class, I would be in another position. And I am really conscious about that. What I'm saying that to say like, to change things, we have to networking. We have to say, oh, it's not my book. This is our book. You know, we have to find ways of working together. And I do agree about education. At the same time, I want to say school is one institution of the capitalism. Yeah? We have to be aware of that. The school, we're going to school to learn how to live in the capitalist society. Being aware of that, we can change things, but we have to be aware.
Hot. We have 2 more remarks from out here. Yep.
Hello. I have a question for you that it's actually on the program and what the reason that I came out here today. And I'm new in the industry. I'm just an emerging artist, a theater maker, director, actor, whatever to survive and create. I come from a school, well, I graduated from SFU, but my origins are from a school similar to yours where we did everything and we had to be, and the only way to miss rehearsals was for you to be dead. If you weren't there, you had to be there. And if something was going to happen, had to happen because you wanted to be there. It was a decision, a choice. So my question, also as an immigrant and someone new into, well, I'm not that new, but new into Canada in this industry, I want to understand from your perspective of anyone in the room, really, that has been longer into the industry, and I really like this question. What does it mean to represent Latinidad on a stage? I really want to understand that as someone who is new. I'm a blank slate on this. I haven't been mistreated in the industry so far. I haven't had that much experience to be mistreated into the industry, so I just want to understand what that means. So as a new person, I can also help develop a new system and a new theater and a new community. Thank you.
You know, I think, because what you're talking about is something that has concerned me a lot, because I'm so aware of the quality of theater that we have in Latin America in many different countries. And in particular, because I'm from Chile, you know, I was more aware of the good things, the good theater plays that were done in Chile. and wanted to promote them. And I never could, and I never could convince a theater director in Victoria to produce a play from Chile or from Mexico, or I did have made several attempts, and they were very scared of. Of course, they're thinking about their audiences. Victoria doesn't have huge audiences, so directors were scared. Who's going to come to see this weird thing, a play from Chile? No, nobody. So then they didn't do it, And I had some really good plays, and it was very frustrating. And I would have said that was for me to share some of the Latinidad that I knew more about, And I think that is, I'm hoping that is not happening so much anymore. But in reality, there is this enormous fear of portraying something from another country. And I started a project in Victoria, which is still going on, which was called World Play, where we would read plays from all over the world, and just the reading, because it was something that we could do. The actors would want to do without getting paid, because we never had money, and also sometimes plays have many characters. And so not to have that kind of thing. But people like to do it because it was done at the Belfry Theatre, which is the one professional theatre that we give them. And it had a good audience. The people were interested, and that gave us the opportunity of sharing plays, not only Latin American plays, but about the whole world. And there were so many examples of good theatre everywhere. I think it was very exciting. No? You can testify to that. It was exciting to see how much good theater there exists everywhere, but difficult. And the powers that be usually did not come to this, like the university or theater directors, the people that came to listen to plays since they couldn't see them. It is tough. It is tough. It is almost as if there was a need for us to really demand that this thing be open, not only to Latin America, but everywhere. Just why are we closing ourselves to go and repeat on and on the same thing? But it has to, it would be wonderful if you are a student. It would be wonderful if you started that demand. And since it's, there needs to be money to do whatever you do, maybe just reading plays aloud together would be a way to start. I don't have a count of how many plays we did, but it was really a huge number. And every year, how many plays are a year now? 4? 4 plays a year, and this started a long time ago, so it's almost like 30 years of reading, for years.
I want to add that now we're bringing some of the playwrights from those parts of the world. So this year we're bringing a playwright from Botswana.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and that's really good. And young people have to support that. They have to come and go and listen, and people have to support each other. That I would say would be very useful.
We're close to having to wrap up, and I do know that you're holding a comment, so just give me one moment. The other thing I was just, that I'm just like looking at everybody and saying there's like 6 women on this stage who didn't really like ask for space. Everyone here started a company, yeah? Everyone here is like running things. So like that seems to me like pretty key to self-definition of how we're represented in the work, is to be the boss of the work. Be a boss, y'all! That's just like, I don't know, because like hearing you one by one is really inspiring. But then as I look down the line, I'm like, yeah, it's a different thing. It's not asking, right? It's not getting a piece of someone else's thing. It's getting the entirety of something that you've defined, and define what the parameters of that is as well. So I find that really interesting.
Can I make a comment? What you
Obviously.
said, you're absolutely correct. And just as Bárbara has said, the networking piece is really, really important. What I always try to do when I'm either promoting like the Black History Month film series, or if I try to, I used to be the executive director of the Granville Island Cultural Society. So I was there for 6 years, managing 3 theaters, had a staff, always noticed that there were times when the theaters were, people weren't coming. So finding ways that there are small theater companies that could use some promotion, could use a venue, could use some help, either coming up with a co-pro or a co-partnership, some way of perhaps bartering for something so that a production can go on, and also promoting emerging artists. I hate saying young artists because you can emerge at any age. Emerging artists, emerging companies, and that while they're promoting you, you're promoting them. I've just put on an animation day for Black History Month. I wanted to find Black animators in Vancouver. They're here, but to find them, you got to do some work. So you put out the network, telling people what you want to do, and then slowly people will call, and a way to promote them and to promote their work. And then constantly building on your network. So when all of a sudden all of the elements for a project make themselves known, you can do a project, but you have to keep building. You have to create your own projects and support others, and make sure that that relationship also is that they are supporting you. We are creating the groundwork and the formation that is outside of what the colonizers have done. We know how to network when it comes to a lot of things outside of the arts. And I say that using the skills that we have had to survive here, either through work or getting an affordable apartment or a place to live, those networks bring those strengths to what you do, but also promoting and creating partnerships. Perhaps they're not with, the arts club, and maybe they're not with a larger theater company, but maybe they are with the smaller companies, and you carry each other as you go along, always promoting the artists and the creators and the producers and the technicians and the supporters that are a part of your network, so that you can continue to create, and making sure that our stories are told. We've done a lot of things to make sure that we are self-reliant. And in terms of those skills, we got to take that outside and put it into our art and into our productions. So that's it.
Yeah, nice.
You're
Thank you. I've got a minute for you, yeah? Okay.
So hi, my name is Francisco, and I'm very privileged here because I have a lot of my teachers in my life present in this room. Lina de Guevara, who I started, it's me. So I did Theater of the Oppressed coming out of theater school, Studio 58, with another one of my life teachers, Jane Heyman, Carmencita, Bárbara. I was in Brazil for that month. So for me, it's a big privilege here. And you're all teachers. You're all wonderful, and from each of you, I've gotten something that's a gold nugget. And I think that the thing that is quite obvious is that you're all women. And I was raised by a feminist single mother, and so I have that perspective. So I think when we're talking about Latinidad, which is, you kind of sort of brought it up, and everybody was right, and everybody was wrong, because we're still trying to figure out which is the whole point of this weekend. So it's not fair to say this and right, because we have to peel it. Yeah. And because if we peel it, there's Latino in Latin America, And I think what we're trying to discuss is Latino us here in North America. Because in Latin America, Latinos oppress Latinos. No matter what color, no matter what gender, no matter what race, indigenous, right? So Latinos oppress Latinos, right? And that's what Barbara's talking about, is the structures of society that create oppression, right? Which is patriarchy, number one, which is why I point out that it's women on the panel, because it's usually the oppressed who say, things have to change, right? Not men going, gee, I want less power, right? So, like, take away my power, please, right? Yeah, no, men are not doing that. Or our corporations, et cetera, et cetera. So, to answer sort of your question, because I'm a Latino actor, and I have been in a weird privilege. I've been able to pass as straight, and I've been able to pass as somewhat European, right? So it's a very weird concept as a Latin American actor. So I have completely struggled because I have not been white enough and I have not been Latino enough for the Latin work in North America, right? So one of the things that fits into that is sort of what everybody has brought. And so I agree 100% is that you have to grab power by saying, I am a Latino actor or I am a Chicana actor, because I'm being told that when you read the scripts, that the ones that you read, whether it's black man or black woman, or the scripts that we get, which is, Latino man, short, like I literally get those descriptions, right? A little rough looking, like all that kind of stuff. So I would show up and I would like, okay, so rough looking, so I won't shave, right? So I won't shave for 2 days, and let me strengthen my accent, right? And I'll wear a cut-off shirt. And then, but then I get to the audition and they look at me, and then, how tall are you? Because I'm not allowed to be tall to be a Latino. Right. So it's a mess, right? And so that's what we are discussing here. And I think the more that we call the actual truths, the more that, we're going to get to the bottom of it. So I think part of the beginning or part of the battles that we do is literally we have to call it out as much as we can, and even we're in the room. Like I blacklisted, I think, from the Vancouver theater, because I made a decision to not do a play that was one of the plays that was a Latino play where the Latino characters were cast with non-Latinos, and there was a huge thing. And they ended up saying, the next time we produce it, we have listened and learned, so the next time they were going to produce it, it was going to be the same thing. And I said, well, no. I said, I thought you said that you had learned that you... And so anyway, the play was not done because of me, because I said, I'm not going to be in this play if you're going to do it exactly how you did it last time. So it is a big problem. So I think for us here is what I think we want to discuss, is that we have to acknowledge that we are Latinos and we are seen as Latinos when we walk in the room. And going back to what somebody else said, which is, by not saying I can be a professional and well-educated and Latino is a concept here that they don't get, which goes to the education part that people were talking about. Because Latinos and Afro-Americans, people from any kind of sort of brown or non-white history, they're not heroes in our school. They're not heroes in our curriculum. They're not even talked about in the curriculum. So I'm saying it's like everybody's right, because there's so many layers to that problem. And then sort of the one sort of specific, maybe I think with you, is what I sort of deal with is accent as well. So we're always apologetic when I walk into the room about either having too little of an accent for being Latino for that role, or having a Latino accent for a white role that I can pass for. Oh, you can pass for that, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a big complex, and I can tell you I've been at it for 30 years, and it's not better.
Yep.
It's not better, which is why we're here. All right, that's all I do.
And thank you. And I'm sorry, I'm going to do a super quick wrap if that's fine with folks, just out of respect for time for the next panel. Interrupt me at any point if you feel the need to do that. I think that sorry, another thing that I'm noticing is common among the leadership that's seated here is that every one of you in telling your story named multiple other artists and actualized them in this space as well. Credit your artistic lineage and your professional and cultural lineage. I think that's really important because if the people that if the people whose stories should be told in our communities are not being told by us, then they're not being told. And so giving weight and significance where it belongs. But also, I also want to acknowledge that in terms of affecting what is Latinidad and what this gentleman spoke of in terms of, and a number of people spoke of the way they're received entering into a room as either in or out of that box, that I also want to acknowledge that the work that you folks are doing is actually rewriting what that is, rewriting what it looks like, rewriting what it sounds like, rewriting the class distinction of the people that you're writing about. And so maybe that is part of what it is to represent Latinidad on stage, is to broaden the lens. And the notable difference between the roles that you're writing for actors from your experience and the repetitive bit roles that they're called upon to play from an outside lens, written from an outside lens, that this is the work, right? This is actually the shift, is writing yourself into the space, taking the space, making that space available to other people, and doing that work to collectively fortify the community, to the communities, plural, and to assert each of your identities and the identities of your allies into that space where otherwise people may not anticipate meeting those themes and those identities in that space. So carry on, rebels. Like, let us disrupt. Let us discomfort. Let us not ask questions that have self-evident answers. Let us go around and around in circles, because that is how we see the whole thing. Thank you all so much for your amazing insights on the panel. Thank you, Caltech. Thank you to Neworld Theater, the sponsor for this panel. Thanks to all of you. Have the best day.